Welcome to the official Lakes International Comic Art Festival podcast. My name's Ian.
And my name's Nikki, bringing you the best in comics and graphic novels and updates from the festival.
Hello and welcome to episode 28 of the Lakes International Comic Art Festival podcast. My name's Ian.
And I'm Nikki.
We're always so good at that.
Well, I just have to say, and I'm Nikki.
That's true.
Like, here's Johnny.
I'm always so good at that. It's been a busy couple of weeks.
Very busy.
And we've got loads of content today because of it.
So much stuff.
We've got coming up interviews from Oldham Comic Con, which we attended the weekend just gone.
Yeah, my list of people I'm putting into my comic dungeon got longer.
Your comic dungeon?
So I'm keeping all the people I like.
Okay.
Where they can draw me comics forever.
Where do you put me?
They're moving swiftly on.
We've also got an interview, which Mike's done, his first interview.
I know.
With Rob from Mantic Games about the Hellboy board game.
Yes, we love Rob.
We do. We actually chatted to Rob in the past, which we've completely forgot about.
Probably he did too.
Yeah. We spoke to him on our previous podcast, House of Geek. He used to edit the tabletop gaming magazine.
He did. He used to send us them.
We got free copies because we did stuff with them.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Back in the mist of time.
And then he pops up and he's now social media manager for Mantic Games.
We love him again.
So so it's a bit different. I know it's not comics, but it's comic related. Mm-hmm. And I think we're going to look at going forward, Mike doing other things like this.
Yes.
Especially with Mantic Games, who would love to do things with as we continue to grow. I didn't know what to say then. I just kept talking.
It was just the way your eyes went vacant as your brain tried to find a word.
But they've also do a Walking Dead board game, and they've got a new one coming out down the line, so hopefully we'll have a chat about that as well.
Absolutely.
So let's talk. Let's ramble a little bit.
Like we ever do that.
News. Just as we record,
yes.
sadly,
Sad
Margot
news.
Kidder has passed away at 69.
That's no age.
No. Most famous role, obviously, was Lois Lane in the original Superman with Christopher Reeve.
She's our Lois.
She's not just that, she's a lot more than that, because there was her and Clark at the time, they were the first proper superheroes that we saw on movies.
That's true.
There'd been other things, but they were the first decent film, if you want to put it that way. First sort of stars of a superhero-based movie.
And we were discussing this, and she was a strong woman. It was a strong part, and she played it well. And
it's just sad.
It is
to see her go.
Yeah.
But those films, I mean, I must have watched 1 and 2 so many times.
Every Christmas.
More than that, I watched them continuously.
I remember it at Christmas. It was one of the ones that was shown, and we'd all sit around and watch it, and it didn't matter how many times you'd seen them.
No. The third one, I must admit, I probably watched the most, even though it's not amazing. And that didn't actually have Margot in it.
No.
But the best film is obviously number 2 with Zod.
Yes.
Isn't it, dear?
Yes.
Just say yes, please.
Yes, dear.
Good.
Not the first one at all.
Well, no, it's not the first one at all.
Okay.
You can't remember what the first one's about.
I can.
Okay.
Not that old yet.
Let's talk about something a bit more happy.
Okay.
Happy.
Oh.
I don't think we mentioned this the last show.
No, we're watching Happy.
Happy is on Netflix.
I love Happy.
It is an absolute amazing TV series.
It's a blast. And it's such a harrowing storyline, really. But I love Happy. I love Happy, and I love, what's his name?
What, the character?
Oh, yes. With an S. Come on, find it quicker.
I can't remember.
And I can see him, and he's always blooded and bruised and dirty. But I love him.
So it's based.
I think he'd make a good Hellboy. I'm just rambling now as I try.
It's based on a comic book by Grant Morrison, which I must have not read.
Which is out of stock now.
Which you can't get hold of, which is understandable. It's the most craziest idea.
It's brilliant.
So a detective who is out of the force for. Well, he's pushed out of the force, essentially.
Well, yes, there's things. Don't spoil it.
He's now a private detective.
He's a hitman.
And he has to go and save his daughter. And the only reason he knows his daughter's in trouble which I didn't even know he had
a daughter. No.
Is by her imaginary friend, a floating unicorn.
Yeah.
Who in the series is animated.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of it is all live. And it's that relationship between this crazy, happy character.
Yeah.
And the main lead character.
And this cynical, jaded, alcoholic ex-cop.
And the violence, like you'd expect in a comic, is so over the top and graphic, but done in a fun way.
Yes, you can't. Yeah, how it kind of like
it's not horrible in any way, shape, or form.
Isn't it? It's that kind of like over the top.
Yeah.
Violence. It is gritty. It's dark. Don't let your children watch it.
No.
But if you want to sit there with a glass of wine and have a good old chuckle at some terrible, terrible things, then this is. I love it. It's fantastic.
Draw the Line comic is coming out. I said we'd have a little chat about this. It's available at the moment on Unbound to Fund.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just give you a bit of a blurb about it. Have you been feeling powerless in a current political climate? With issues like the migrant crisis, Brexit, and Trump in the White House causing ever more division and fear, it's easy to feel like you can't do anything. Now Draw the Line shows that anyone can make a difference with small, easy to achieve actions that anyone can take, each beautifully illustrated by 114 comic artists. Not each of them illustrated by 114.
No.
Each one a separate illustrator.
There's a knack to doing blurb. Okay, and you always take the mick out of me. See how hard it is?
I try. So have a search for that. If you just type in Draw the Line comic, it gives all the details on there. But it's been done by so many different creators and artists creating this book. It's well worth going and having a look. So search that out.
Absolutely.
So Oldham Comic Con.
Yes.
Now, before we get into that, actually, let's just mention we're not going to do any sort of proper reviews this episode. Our next episode is going to be
Review Central.
Review-tastic. We're going to do loads of books because we've sort of fallen behind on reviews. So we thought
we've got lots to do. Yeah.
So next episode is a big one. But Oldham Comic Con, we went. Very well organised event, I found.
It was brilliant. Yeah, in the library.
Full of just comic creators. There was a little table with some Funko Pops on.
They were only on the edge.
Hardly anything.
They were only on the edge of a table.
I mean, yeah, there was a couple of people selling merch, but not much.
No, there wasn't much.
And you need to have some.
Yeah.
It was all comic creators, or illustrators, writers, whatever.
Yeah.
It was impressive.
Some big names.
And it was free.
It was totally free.
Totally free.
It was a good vibe.
Yeah. And they had Wagner and Carlos, which are big names in their own right. Did we get an interview with them?
No, because the queues are really long.
Yeah, we just couldn't disturb.
No, you couldn't do that and then hold up the queue for 10 minutes whilst we babbled on.
Which is a shame.
But we did see them.
Yes. Everton Brothers were there.
We love the Everton
Brothers.
Had a good
chat with those, but not recorded this time. I think we'll grab them at Matt Powell.
Okay.
We'll have a bit of chat with them there.
Yeah.
Mark Jackson was there again. We'll see him at the next event. But yeah, the vibe was great. It seemed to be busy all day.
Yeah, and the cosplayers kind of came out after lunch.
Yeah.
Didn't they? They could have appeared.
Out of under the depths of the rocks.
So that was kind of cool as all the cosplayers came out. And you had families there. I think because it's free and it was in the library, because the library is still open as well. So you still had people coming in and out doing library things. I think it attracted a lot of footfall because of that.
Which is what you want. Because you want new people seeing this range of comics that they don't know exist, let's be honest.
Yes. And I particularly like the quiet area. So like for my lovely autistic son, that was a lot better. So he could go out the way. And they had board games and books and stuff in
Which
there.
was all to do with the library, I suppose, in a way. But it was very good.
Yeah, and colouring and stuff. So I approved of that.
So a great event. Have a look at it next year if you're around the Manchester way.
Yeah, definitely.
And one of the things, I said I wasn't going to do reviews, but I do want to talk about the comic that was launched there, Jack and Lucy by Rachael Smith and Jacob Phillips. Did you want to do the blurb?
Would you like to pass it over so I can read the blurb?
There's no actual blurb.
I was going to say, is there a blurb, dear?
No.
Well done. You did well there.
I know. So this is a free comic that was launched, and I believe it was supported or funded by Oldham Library, Oldham Council, and it's based around essentially Rachael and Jacob listened to some kids talking about their issues and problems as teenagers, and then wrote a comic.
Yes.
Around some of those subjects and topics.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
I think it was very powerful, considering, I mean, it's not long, but the powerful messages that comes across within the pages.
No, it's just a story
hits you between the eyes, and it's no, I think it hits the heart of the matter in a lot of things.
It's just a story about a boy and a girl,
just friends,
and their individual issues.
They're individual, completely different issues, but issues you can relate to, and the feelings that they had, you can relate to.
Yeah, I mean,
you don't have to have the same issues as these two have in this, but you can relate to how they feel. Yeah,
no, it's very well done. You can get a copy of this. I think we'll put a link up. You just pay postage. Mm-hmm. It's completely free, and I think it's well worth having a look. Yeah, and I think Jacob Phillips' art is superb, and I think he's going to be a big name down the line in the comic world, definitely. So brilliant. Go and have a look at that if you can. I think it's free to read online as well.
Oh, well, there you go then. So
you don't even have to get a postage copy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right, so we've got some interviews.
Yes.
So I'm going to... Shall I read the names? Let's read the names.
Go on then. See if you can actually get them right this time, unlike in the interviews.
So we have chats with Lee Overton and Pete Davis, John Slater and Mike West, Tazio Battin.
Brilliant.
Warhammer.
What happened there?
Yasmin Sheikh, Sam Chapman, Dan Whitehead and Nigel from Mayamada. I can't find his surname anywhere. He doesn't say it.
No, he doesn't,
It's not
does
on
he?
the website. It's nowhere.
He's a ninja.
He is. Well, he is doing manga-based.
Exactly.
Comics, UK manga.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, some great chats with all those guys. And then after that, I say we've got Rob from Mantic Games and Pete continuing his look at Kirby.
Mike's mutterings.
Hello and welcome again. I planned an episode around Hellboy for a while now, especially as everyone, without exception, on the podcast is a huge fan of Mike Mignola's most famous half-demon. But a couple of weeks ago, the much-anticipated Kickstarter for Hellboy the board game launched, which we immediately backed. And so this episode, I'm fortunate enough to be joined by Rob Burman from Mantic Games, who launched that Kickstarter. And so this episode, I'm fortunate to have with me Rob Burman from Mantic Games, who's the social media manager and behind the new launch of the Hellboy the board game Kickstarter.
Yes. So, it's been very exciting. The Kickstarter's been, it's done very well. I never like to jinx these things just in case, but, we're kind of up to £1 million now, which is, pretty amazing. So, just in case, people don't know how Kickstarters work, it's kind of companies come up with an idea, and then they kind of present it to the world and say, hey, if you like this idea, you can help us get it made. And then they kind of basically pitch in with some money, and then normally they get a load of stuff in return, and they get a big discount, and then they get some freebies as well. So we kind of came to the Kickstarter with the idea of doing a Hellboy board game, and it's been received really well actually by fans and all around the world.
I backed it myself.
Thank you.
I tried to back it the first second it came out, and I still came out as backer 216. So that normally means that it's going quite well. And like you said, I noticed yesterday it passed the 1 million mark, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's Mantic's 16th Kickstarter. So you're quite adept at doing these now, aren't you?
Yeah. So I mean, the beauty of Kickstarters is obviously you kind of get to make a really amazing product. You get to make the product that you necessarily wouldn't have been able to make in the first place. If you look at kind of Hellboy, we probably would have come out with one game, no expansions, kind of a limited cast of characters. But, as you know, that the Hellboy lore is so fantastic that we really kind of worked to come out the gates with, all the famous characters, Johan, Liz, Hellboy, Abe, Rasputin, giant frog monsters, all those kind of stuff. And the Kickstarter allows us to do that and allows us to make a lot more than we would have done if we hadn't kind of gone to Kickstarter. And also the other great thing is, we've got 10,000 people, and that's an established kind of Hellboy community who are ready from day one to start creating their own missions and sharing painting tutorials and all things like that. So it's a great community building device as well, actually.
And I've seen it with your previous comic adaptation, Walking Dead Kickstarter. That that went absolutely brilliantly, and it's going really strong as a game now as well, isn't it?
Yeah, so, Walking Dead, I mean, obviously that did very well on Kickstarter, but then actually at retail in kind of shops, it sold 5-6 times the amount that they actually did on Kickstarter, which is really good. And it's, like you say, it's still going strong. Later this year, we're going to release Wave 5, which is the first wave that's direct into stores, and that'll be based around the Hunters, that kind of part of the storyline. So with The Walking Dead, we've actually progressed through the stories. So it starts off just with Rick, then goes on to Miles Behind Us, which is obviously the Herschel's farm, through to the prison, and then the governor in Woodbury. So yeah, we're planning something similar for Hellboy. Kind of the initial game is based around Seed of Destruction, but then we can kind of obviously move through to Wake the Devil, Conquer a Worm, and kind of, Hellboy Mexico was the expansion that we just launched.
I was about to mention that. You were going sort of in chronological order and then went off at a tangent with Hellboy in Mexico, which I just loved that idea.
Yeah, I mean, the reason for doing that is we all absolutely loved Hellboy in Mexico. It's actually one of my favourites because it's so bizarre. I mean, the idea of Hellboy in his luchador wrestling outfit, wrestling a giant vampire bat. That was so awesome. And it's the kind of thing that at retail it would have been a bit odd because it would have been so completely out of sync. So we thought, this is a good opportunity for us to do something a little bit crazy and a little bit unusual, and that's kind of the result. Hellboy in Mexico, and that, I think it's brilliant. The miniatures are fantastic, and you'll have a great scenario which ends in a wrestling ring for that one. As you and all the other, the luchadors face off against the vampire bat.
Like you said, the Hellboy lore is just so huge, and I can see so many different expansions that you could do for this. I mean, there's obviously a lot being included in the initial pledge on the Kickstarter. I mean, coming to that, I was quite surprised. I've actually been part of Mantic Kickstarters before.
Yes.
So I know how they run, and I know that as you get more investment, that allows you to add stretch goals, which means that you can develop and give free stuff to backers.
Yeah, sure.
And you can also develop and add them on as extras.
Yeah.
I was surprised that you seem to go all out immediately. I know that Mantic Kickstarters always end up good value.
Yeah.
But straight from the first pledge, it was just immediately great value, the amount of stuff with it. Is that kind of a new approach you're doing?
I mean, we kind of knew Hellboy was such a big license. We kind of wanted to come out straight from the bat and say, look at all the awesome stuff you're going to get. You are going to get, the tentacle monster. You are going to get giant frog monsters. You are going to get the Conqueror Worm. So we really kind of wanted to make sure that from day one it was fantastic value for what you're getting. I mean, you're roughly getting it for 50% off what it would normally cost, and then you're getting a load of added stuff on top of that as well. So yeah, we kind of wanted to make sure we had lots and lots in there, lots and lots, so people could see their favourite characters and things like that. And and then obviously we've kind of added more characters like Lobster Johnson, Roger, Hecate, all these kind of characters that kind of come into the comics. So it's been really fun actually to take reactions from the community and see what they think as well, and also take suggestions from them as well. That's one of the good things about Kickstarter is you can actually adapt and change things based on what the community wants. So we've had some suggestions to. For example, we had this idea of backup agents, and the idea for that one was like people like Kate Corrigan or Trevor Broom wouldn't necessarily be always in the thick of it, but you could kind of call them in to help out in tricky moments. And originally we just had those as miniatures with a little card that you could kind of bring in. But then people were like, I really want to play as Kate, I really want to play as Trevor. So we were like, okay, well, we've kind of got the scope now to actually change that and make them playable characters as well. And that's what we've done. So that's one of the cool things about Kickstarter is you can kind of take on feedback as you kind of doing the campaign and respond to what people want.
I was going to say, in the comments section at the moment, you're actually kind of running a bit of a competition, aren't you, for people who are backing in the comments section of the Kickstarter?
Yeah. That's another thing. We kind of, in the game, you can equip your agents with different, equipment, items. Because if you've read the comics, you know that sometimes they have like grenades and rocket packs and all that kind of stuff. So we thought actually there's a brilliant opportunity for people in the community to suggest what items they would like to, see, whether it's some Zinco Corporation stuff, those kind of items. So yeah, we're running a competition at the minute that people can actually come up with, a an idea of an item they would like to see. We've had a lot of suggestions for pancakes after the Pancakes Hellboy short.
Yes.
Yeah.
A definite fan favourite.
Yeah. But then we'll actually make those into equipment cards in the Kickstarter edition. So that was a really nice touch we thought, because the community has been so involved, and all the comments is really active with people suggesting things they'd like to see in characters. A lot of which we actually have got on our list for the next couple of weeks, but I'm not going to kind of reveal all. But it's quite good to sometimes say, I'd really like to see this character, and we're just kind of nodding, going, oh yeah, well, you might see that character in a couple of weeks, don't worry.
I think every character under the sun has already been suggested in the comments. I think it's a really good community on this one. I guess whilst we're talking about mechanics, really, I guess people need to know that the miniatures look stunning, by the way.
Yeah.
And it is a miniatures game, but it is a board game. What I'm liking about it is it doesn't seem to be just a skirmish game. It's very much a board game. There's a skirmish side to it. There's an investigative side to it as well. I was just wondering if you could sort of give a brief rundown on the type of game it is.
Sure. So, basically what we always knew we wanted to kind of have two sides of the game, because if you've read the comments, you know there's two sides. They often, Abe and Hellboy and the crew will be called in to some kind of spooky location, whether it's like an old kind of mansion or a kind of an old graveyard or church, and they'll be called in, and that they kind of know that there's something weird going on, but they're not always quite sure what's happening. So there's kind of that element of the game where you're actually exploring this location and investigating and finding clues. And the way it works is you've got something called a case file, and a case file is a bit like, if you've played a role-playing game, it's a bit like the kind of Dungeon Master. It's a bit like a virtual Dungeon Master, which is this deck of cards which you reveal as you're progressing, and that actually tells the story. So you'll open this deck of like 10 cards, and it'll just say on the top one, you've arrived at this location, there's something weird going on, you've got to investigate. And then you'll flip it over, and it'll tell you how to set up the board. So the board itself is actually, it's not like your standard playing board where you just flip it over. It's actually modular, so it's different bits that you can all join together in different ways. So you might start in a graveyard and then move to like a spooky corridor, or like in Mexico, end up in a wrestling ring. The board itself can change as you're playing through the game. And then what you'll do is kind of you and the other BPRD agents, you can play it by yourself if you want, or it goes up to 4 players. You'll have to explore this location looking for clues. Unfortunately, you're not the only one there, and you will encounter different minions. So there are these kind of frog monsters, or you've got the kind of Nazi soldiers in the Conqueror Worm one, and then you've got kind of lots of different birds and beasts as well. And so unfortunately, the other kind of side of Hellboy is you're going to have to do some fighting. And obviously, as you'd expect, Hellboy is pretty handy when it comes to a scrap. So what you'll be doing then is kind of rolling dice. And it's a really intuitive dice system, because we realise that kind of a lot of people, for some people, this might be their first kind of miniatures game or board game. So the dice are all different colours, and depending upon kind of how good you are in combat or how good you are at investigating, you'll roll different coloured dice. So that's all you're doing, kind of really. You're going through and you're rolling the dice, trying to kind of beat these bad guys up, and also telling the story of what's going on in this case file. So the case file might be that you'll find like a secret entrance to like a shrine, or there might be a special weapon that you find. So yeah, it's a bit like people know the phrase dungeon crawler, which is a bit where you're working through a dungeon. And then it'll end in the kind of big confrontation with one of the big baddies. So that could be Hecate or Rasputin or Kriegaffer, the big kind of Nazi gorilla. So yeah, it's kind of a bit like a video game in that sense. You could play through the level and end with a big boss fight at the end.
Because one of the things that appealed to me was definitely that it was a cooperative board game. So it's kind of you against the board without having one of your group having to be the dungeon master role as such. And I think I really like that. But the idea of the scenarios as well and the replayability of it, I think looks good. One of the things I wasn't sure about is the BPLD case file that's been mentioned.
Yeah. And
the ability to write your own scenarios. I was interested how that worked.
Okay, so with these the BPRD case files, it's kind of the scenario itself is generated by these cards. So you'll have 10 cards, and like I said, they'll start off with a location. So the location could be that spooky manor or a graveyard. And so what will happen is in the narrative ones, in the like when you're playing through the core game or Conquer a Worm, that will be very much themed around that particular story. So the Conquer a Worm one, for example, will be you arriving at the kind of castle, heading into a Nazi laboratory and then facing off against the kind of bad guys there before coming up against Conquer a Worm. And they're very narrative. They tell a story that's quite close to the comics. But then what you've also got is the BPRD archives, which is where you can basically create, it's a bit like a playlist, a Hellboy playlist, where you kind of take all of your kind of favourite elements from Hellboy and mix them together into the case file. So that could be that you arrive at the same mansion that's in Conquer a Worm, but then the next cards you put in there are actually that you're facing up against the frog monsters rather than the Nazis. And that the point of interest you've got to find is, a particular sword or something like that. So you actually mix in the cards, shuffle them all together, and create a new scenario like that. So rather than some kind of games, when it comes to creating your own missions, are quite complicated because you have to create the map, you have to kind of design the scenario. But actually, for these ones, it's a case of the cards will be numbered from, say, like 1 to 10, and then you'll know which cards to swap out for the respective cards for different sets. So you'll swap out 2 and 3 to change the minions, or you'll swap out 8 and 9 to actually face off against a different boss.
That's brilliant. I really like the replayability aspect of it. And I think it's one of those things that makes me invest in a game as well. The fact that it's Hellboy is it was a no-brainer, really, to get involved in this one.
Yeah, with the replayability, we always wanted to make sure, actually, even if you just play through the standard mission, so if you just play through Mission 1, which is, facing off against the giant frog monster at the end. Well, that's not really a spoiler because it's in some of the videos, but that mission itself will actually change quite a bit. Even if you play it with the same characters, you've got something called the Deck of Doom. And the Deck of Doom is these random events that can happen during the course of the game. Because if you've read Hellboy, you'll know that random events are part of the course. Whether it's dropping through the floorboards or kind of, killer birds turning into harpies and attacking Hellboy. So with the Deck of Doom, you've got this thing that it could be that minions suddenly start appearing, or something that you thought was just an innocent group of frogs turns into a massive frog monster and starts attacking you. So you've got that element which will change pretty much every time you play. And then you've also got the encounter deck. So although the board will be set up in the same fashion, so you'll have the same map, when you go into a room, you flip over something called the encounter deck, and that tells you what's in that room. So it could be, one time you could go into that room and it could be just have a couple of clues in. Another time it could have some clues in and some frog monsters. And then a third time when you play, it could be just full of frog monsters. So there's a real kind of chance to play through even the same tutorial mission in some ways and get a different result, based on what you find as you go exploring.
No, it's sounding fantastic. And I guess it's the perfect medium as well. Because like you said, the whole structure of Hellboy is things happen, follow the clues, violence ensues.
Yes. That's a good summing up of Hellboy.
So yeah, it just sounds absolutely perfect. I'm also, I really enjoy my miniatures and I also enjoy painting. And I believe, I've actually seen the Walking Dead miniatures, so I know how good they are in the material that they're made. But I believe there's been mention of resin miniatures for collectors and serious painters. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's absolutely right. So we kind of have these add-on Wednesdays every week where we introduce new things. So the first week was some 3D scenery, which is kind of an optional thing that people like. This week was Hellboy in Mexico. And then, week 3 will be this kind of chance to get resin versions for collectors and for painters mainly. So the difference between resin and the PVC plastic which they're made in is that resin captures the detail incredibly well. PVC plastic is good, if you've seen from The Walking Dead, but resin is absolutely crisp. It's like they've, just been printed direct from the mold and sent out. So the beauty of resin is that you will get these really kind of great miniatures that even if you don't want to play the game, you can kind of get them and paint them and keep them on your shelf. And we've actually already sent out a few of the resin Hellboys to different painters around the world. Obviously, Angel Heraldez, he's a world-class painter who's painted all the ones that are on the page.
Yes, I recognise the name immediately, and also been following. He's been posting up on Facebook.
Yeah.
Some of what he's been doing, absolutely stunning. So they're the resin ones.
It makes me sick. Cool. It makes me absolutely sick. Yes. I mean, the kind of quality, PVC plastic is good. It does capture the quality, but kind of resin takes it to that next level. So if you do want to paint them, and you do necessarily want to collect them, we'll be having that option as well. So we're not probably going to do all of the miniatures, but we will definitely do obviously Hellboy, Liz, Abe, and those guys as well.
The main player ones, I think.
Basically, yeah. I think the ones that people want to collect. They'll be going live next week.
One of the things that you stated up front was Mike Mignola's understanding of the board game, and he's even actually done some original artwork for the game as well. I was just wondering how you actually get a license to actually do a comic adaptation of something as big as Hellboy. I take it that's a complicated process, and how do you get the creator on board? Yeah, so
very complicated and very long as well. I mean, I actually started talking to Dark Horse in late 2016.
Wow.
That's when we first started making contact with them, and obviously Mantic this is our third kind of comic book license. We did Mars Attacks, then we did The Walking Dead, and Hellboy was the kind of next on our hit list, really. The Mars Attacks one was a great one to kind of get used to working with a license. Walking Dead was obviously massive. And then Hellboy, kind of outside of Marvel and DC, he's probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest. He's certainly one of the most recognisable because of the films. So he was kind of top of our list. So we started talking to Dark Horse, and we presented them the idea, and we explained it to them, this kind of what I was explaining to you, really, this idea of the agents going around, looking for clues. There's been an investigation element, and it's quite a simple pitch, really. But then, obviously, in there, we suggested that we'd like to bring in characters like Roger and Lobster Johnson, and possibly expand into Hellboy in Mexico or Darkness Calls. And I think based on that, they saw that actually there was no reference to the films in there, for example. We didn't mention or show any images of Ron Perlman as Hellboy. So I think they quickly realised that we understood what was different in the comics compared to the films. And Mike Mignola really appreciated that. And then it obviously went back and forth for quite a while. And then it was kind of late last year when we actually finally signed it. And yeah, it was, that was really exciting. We couldn't believe it. We were absolutely ecstatic in the office because we knew that it was going to be a great game. But then Mike himself has actually been quite involved. He approves everything. So he sees all the miniatures.
Wow.
All the kind of, the general kind of concept art. So everything. So every miniature you see on the page has been seen by Mike and approved by Mike.
That's got to be daunting for your sculptors.
Yeah.
They've got to get what they've sculpted approved by the man himself. Right.
Yeah. Actually, Hellboy, we got right first time, which was good. And actually, Mike sent us some little kind of never seen before drawings, just of like of kind of what to do when we were doing it, which is really interesting. Things like never show the palm of his hand, because if you look in the comics, you never actually see what the inside of his hand looks like. Things like what his gun is, and how that he on his holster for his gun. His holster's always open; it's never shut. So we've always got some little details like this. Obviously, he knows because he's been drawing him for so long. But then when it came to someone like Abe was actually one of the most difficult ones to sculpt, and he ended up actually sending us a little drawing of what Abe should, what the back of Abe's head should look like and things like that. So that has been amazing, and like you mentioned, we kind of asked him to do the Kickstarter exclusive box art, so he did that. So that's a brand new piece of artwork he did, and we kind of said roughly this is what the game is, these are the characters, and then kind of can you do something based on that? And yeah, he came up with that absolutely awesome bit of artwork.
That's superb. One of the things I love about joining a Kickstarter is you've mentioned the sense of community before, but you also get a little bit of a look behind the scenes of how things like this get developed. But you've gone one further. You've been doing a little blog, haven't you?
Yeah. So one thing we wanted to do before the Kickstarter launch, we wanted to give a blog and a bit of an insight into the decisions we made and kind of the game previews as well. So obviously we will be publishing it, but the designer is James M. Hewitt from Needy Cat Games, and he's worked with us before. He used to work at Mantic, actually, a while ago. Then he went off to Games Workshop, and while he was at Games Workshop, he did Necromunda, Blood Bowl, Warhammer Quest, so these big titles. And then he went freelance and started up Needy Cat Games, which was brilliant for us because we were like, perfect, this fits in really nicely with us having Hellboy, because there are some similarities between this and Warhammer Quest. So, we kind of got him involved. And between myself and him, we've been kind of detailing the background of, why we made particular decisions, why, for example, there's, how the agents work, how the turns work. So if you want a kind of an insight into the development process, those blogs, which are all linked on the Kickstarter, are a good place to start.
No, well, I definitely recommend them. I've been enjoying reading what I've come across, actually. I guess it needs to be said that this is all about the comics, not about the films.
Yes.
I have to say, I love the two films.
Yeah.
As much. The comics will always be the source.
Yes.
But I thought the films were very well done. I must mention that there is a reboot film.
Yeah.
That's coming out in 2019, and I think roughly about the same time as this delivers, this Kickstarter.
What a happy coincidence!
It is, isn't it?
So obviously, like I say, we started talking to Dark Horse way before the film had been announced, which I think they kind of appreciated as well. We hadn't just jumped on and said, "Oh wow, there's a Hellboy film coming out! Quick, let's try and get the license." We'd started talking to them before that, so. We only have the comic book license. We don't have any of the film licenses at all, even the new one or anything like that. But I think the good thing is that Hellboy is back in the zeitgeist. I mean, I hate that phrase, but, everyone's kind of talking about Hellboy again. So it's kind of happy coincidence, really, like I say.
Well, there's more than one happy coincidence going on because, for people who, and I'm guessing there must be some out there who aren't familiar with the Hellboy comics, they've actually just started to release omnibus editions of them.
That's right. Yeah, they came
in
out
chronological order.
Yeah.
And the first one, I think, comes out the day this Kickstarter ends. And then it's staggered monthly, so you could quickly build up a complete Hellboy core series collection anyway. And I guess that's going to lead me on to my next question. At the moment, you've kind of done the core Hellboy stories. I take it at the moment, I'm not sure, is it a different license or not planned yet? There's offshoots like Hellboy and the BPRD, Hellboy in Hell series. Are those considerations for the future for expanding this board game?
Yeah, so at the minute for this Kickstarter, we're just focusing on those kind of core, and again, Hellboy in Mexico, there's core graphic novels which tell the story, the initial story, but we do kind of have the option to add like the BPRD and Hellboy in Hell kind of later. I think there's definitely kind of BPRD in particular would be an absolutely awesome spin-off game. I think, because obviously Hellboy is not even in that. It's Johan, Ben Dymo, all those kind of guys. So I think that there's definite options. I mean, we see this as the Kickstarter finishes, and that's really kind of phase one. And then phase 2 and 3 are kind of, a lot, really exciting stuff in the future as well.
Thanks a lot, Rob. That was absolutely brilliant. Until next time, in the words of Hellboy himself, don't mess with me, lady. I've been drinking with skeletons.
Do I get the names wrong?
You can pronounce it wrong if you want. It's all good.
That means he listens. We have with us Lee Overton and... Oh, it's gone already. Jesus Christ.
That's definitely on there, isn't it?
That's on there.
Excellent.
That's recorded.
It's Pete Davis,
Pete
but you
Davis.
can call me any rude name under the sun.
It was a simple name as well.
Yeah, it's not difficult.
I've been driving up here trying to learn Carlos.
Go on.
I can't say it.
Just Carlos.
Carlos. It's John and Carlos. It's like a double act. So, tell us what you got here on the desk in front of us.
Basically, we got a comic book, The Axeman Cometh, which is a gothic horror about loosely based on a true story.
Loosely based on the New Orleans Axeman.
Makes it scary.
Yeah. Loosely based on that, and then a short mini comic, basically about a hoodie that strangles people.
Strangle hood, is it?
Basically.
It's a short story about a possessed hoodie that kills people.
That sounds amazing.
It is.
And we're modest too.
So the Axeman have come to do a bit on Kickstarter, you said?
That was on Kickstarter about 18 months ago.
How did you find that process?
Well, I wasn't the primary person doing the Kickstarter, but it was very, very stressful, to be honest with you. I didn't get the art done beforehand, which made it even more stressful. As you know, it's not easy to just throw a pen on paper. And obviously once you're getting going, it becomes nerve-wracking, worrying, people are going to like it, etc., etc. So, but thankfully we had enough friends and family that put in and got the thing kick-started, basically.
We watched a few Kickstarters and they do seem to rely heavily on friends, certainly initially, until it really starts picking up and kicking off. And you haven't got that behind you to give you that boost.
You need a big community, I think, behind you. The people who like your work, I guess, and as you say, know you and are willing to throw down money.
What advice could you give then to people who are
don't do
considering?
it.
Don't.
No, the advice I give is get everything done beforehand, so that when the Kickstarter's kickstarted, the only thing you really need to do is get it printed. Because I think this was supposed. It was kickstarted in October, and it was months and months late, to be perfectly honest with you. I would say if you ever do a Kickstarter, if I ever did one again, get it done beforehand and do the Kickstarter when it's literally ready. It's literally done. It just takes all the stress off you, because that month of the Kickstarter, you're already stressed about will it actually fund or not. If you're also trying to get the book finished at the same time, it just there's too much stress there. Get it all done beforehand, and then when you kickstart it, it's literally ready to go if it funds. But you can also tell people then it's actually the book's done, the book's completed.
They're not waiting.
So they're not waiting. Literally, the second it's funded, I can send it to you, the PDF of it, so you've got it then, and then it's just waiting for funds to come in to print the book. I think that's
if you could show people you've got work going on, and then they've got something to invest in, instead of saying, I want your money, but I haven't started anything yet. I think people are a bit more cautious then. If you haven't got anything yes, definitely. If you haven't got anything to prove that you are serious about this book, why should they be serious about giving you the money? So it's definitely better to have something ready to show people, ready to go, and as less delay as possible. But then you take that into your next one as well, don't you? And take that into your next Kickstarter. You live and learn. You know what works and how to get the word out there next time. But definitely have something to show people that you're serious about it and that their money is going to go into something worthwhile.
So what advice, now you're probably doing this for sale, would you give to somebody who's starting up and wants to stand behind that table at some point in the future?
I was going to give away free things like sweets and food,
sausage rolls,
anything.
Definitely
I think that's the most interesting. I was eating a sausage. We was up in Cheltenham Comic Con, and I was eating a sausage roll behind the counter, and some people came over and I thought, they're looking at the book. Where'd you get the sausage roll from? so food brings the people in. You've just got to have the pattern to keep them there.
I would say, don't worry. Honestly, just get it done. That's The worst thing is staring at a blank piece of paper and thinking to yourself, as a writer or an artist, think to yourself, what do I do? Just get it done, and if it looks bad to begin with, fine, you can restart it. But if you're staring at a blank piece of paper, there's nothing there to be, to think, that's good or that's bad. So I would just say, just go for it. There's enough bad stuff out there on the shelves as it is, by much bigger, publishers.
With the bad stuff.
You can come stand next to us and not sell stuff at all. It's all good.
But you'll have a laugh.
You'll have a laugh.
That's
the main thing. Just relax and enjoy yourself.
Relax, enjoy yourself. Be brave. Put your stuff out there. It may not catch on straight away, but hopefully you will catch, even if it's one or two people that buy your stuff. And hopefully, then they can.
I think the podcast will definitely help you as well. To promote it. But the worst thing is
just hijack.
Whether the work is good or bad, at least there's something out there. That sounds really bad, but it is true. It is true. I mean, this is stuff. How many years ago did I do this? But we just decided, you know what? We'll throw it together. Sorry, that's not the Axeman Comic. That sounds really bad. The Stranglehood was something we did a few years ago, and I thought, do you know what? We're going to get some out there cheaply, just for people to get in their hands, etc. But it's better than going, what if? Because that's the worst thing, saying, I could have done this, I could have been that. If you get the stuff out there, it's out there. If it's good or bad, well, then you move on to the next one and hope you improve each time, as opposed to sitting there going, I could have done that and I could have done that, but I never did. So
where can people find your work online if they're not seeing you at a convention?
I've got a big cartel store. I've not got a clue what it is. If you go,
we're going to take marketing off you. I think we'll reassign that to someone else.
If you were to look on either the PXD artist on Facebook or the Axeman Cometh on Facebook, you can obviously message us there. We're on Twitter as well, myself. And
at the PXD.
At the PXD.
I'll do it for you.
I'm so glad you could read it. Didn't remember my name, but he can read off the thing, so that's good. That's the best way. Just get in contact and I'll do the best I can.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, guys.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, we're here with the guys from Cog Life Comics. Give us your names, guys, because as I've already proven, I'm useless at this.
I'm John Slater, writer and artist at Cog Life Comics.
Yeah, I'm Mike West. I also write and draw, mainly because I can't afford to pay someone to actually draw things yet.
Yeah. So what is Cog Life Comics then?
So Cog Lives is like the collective between me, John, Deck Montgomery and Matt Green, who aren't here today, and we bring out books, we do anthologies together.
Okay.
We bring out, Matt's brought out The Art of Running, which is a autobiography of Steve Profontaine, the South African runner.
Okay.
I'm probably butchering that, but that's his project that he's doing, and we just bring out our solo projects under the same banner, just so we have each other's guidance, so I can bounce ideas and things off John. We can work together on scripts and things, and it's just a collective that we can all work under and achieve, just bringing out our own books and having that support network.
I think it definitely helps then being
absolutely,
having it all together.
Because I'm a procrastinator by nature, so Mike cracks the whip and I get drawing. So
I can relate.
What gives you ideas then to create your work? Is there anything that stands out?
I'm very much drawn to the mundane, really. So Isolation was kind of born from when we were driving back from Thought Bubble, and there's that lone house on the M62, I think it is, where
in the middle of the
yeah. So I drew inspiration from that, and I'm just kind of how would you even live like that? It's isolated. Yeah. So our anthology ideas, it's based off a single word. So in this case, isolation. Our next anthology is going to be called Survivor. Which we kind of decided over a pie, didn't we?
Yeah, I think that was at Thought Bubble. In 2016 at Thought Bubble, we decided to bring a book on. That's where we chose Isolation. Thought Bubble last year, when we were bringing out this book, we were like, well, we need the next one. So I think Deck came up with Survivor for that one, and then that was. It's good to have one word and then just give it to someone and see where they're going to go with it. And then it stops the anthologies from being boring or one note, and it gives you different ways to see it. And then how I get inspired is by seeing what these guys have done and seeing what they'll bring to it, and then being like, well, what can I do to either mirror that, just complement it a bit, or go completely insane with it and do my own spin on it.
I think Survivor's taken a bit of a horror turn though.
Well, I suppose,
it does.
It lends itself to.
Yeah. So
it's
So where can people find out about your work then as well?
If you follow us at cog_life, we're on Twitter.
Yep.
It's Coglifer on Facebook. And then our respective Instagrams are all linked through that. We have www.coglifecomics.co.uk, which is our main site, which you can follow then. And then it's my personal site is mike333west.com, and then that's got a link to everything as well.
And my Instagram is at little_John, Jon, and then an S. Yeah. It's hard describing handles, isn't it?
It can be.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thanks very
so much, guys.
That's great. Thank you.
So we're at the Titan stand here with, what's your name again, sorry?
I'm Tazio.
I was never going to try and pronounce that because I would fail completely.
It's no problem.
You're currently drawing a lot of the Warhammer comics, you're saying.
Yes.
How are you finding that then?
Sorry?
How are you finding that in relation to drawing that world? Is there any sort of areas you have to follow? As in standards to draw the world, or are you open and free to do what you want?
Well, it's a very rich and detailed world.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of reference and actually inspiration that you can follow. And I like to build on that. Like whenever I draw a Necron ruin or the inside of a spaceship, there is a lot of reference that you can take inspiration for, but not so much that is specific. Like the inside of spaceships is rarely depicted in the official art. So I will take what I can see from how they look from the outside and try to translate that in the inside. So I take Gothic cathedral and try to imagine how all that could be functional parts of a spaceship. The columns, the statues, etc.
Okay.
So that's mostly what I do. I take inspiration, try to recapture it, and then of course it all goes through a very thorough process of vetting. So if my job is being done well, the people at Games Workshop will appreciate it. And otherwise they will ask me to change things, but so far I've been really blessed in that they almost never ask me to change things. I think it feels familiar to me, so I don't find it problematic to try to recapture the aesthetics of an armor or of the other species that are in the universe. So, yeah.
So you say before that you have played the game in the past, the miniatures, which I'm currently
a long
getting
time
back into a long time ago. Don't make it sound that long.
It is. We're talking about 20 years or so ago.
It's not that long. It's not that long.
Okay, some time ago. Back when they were made in metal.
Yes, well, yeah, that's a long time.
I actually prefer the plastic now. I've gone back to painting and collecting a little bit of them. Now playing the Warhammer 40k game, I'm more of a board gamer, so I prefer the special games like Shadespire or even Warhammer Quest. I love those. Really good games.
Individual games.
Shadespire is amazing.
I refuse to buy into it because I know it will cost me a lot of money.
Well, if you consider that when you buy, are you recording?
Yeah.
The price is very affordable.
Well, yes, it is. It is to start with, but then as you add more,
it's more time-consuming than money-consuming to get them all the warbands painted.
Yes, that's true.
But they are beautiful. I mean, have you seen the Skaven?
Yes.
They are so dynamic, and I've never seen such beautiful Skaven models before, so I would have bought them even if I didn't play the game, because they are beautiful. Some of the best I've ever seen.
So if somebody wanted to jump into the 40k series, where would you start at the moment?
I would say the first book is Will of Iron.
Yeah.
It's the first of 3 books arcs centering on the Dark Ages and the Inquisition, and of course Chaos. And that's a good starting point, I think. We made it tries to be readable by people who haven't much familiarity with the franchise. At the same time, it's enjoyable by people who are much into the franchise. So I think it's a good. And there's Death Watch 2, which is Death Watch, which is just started.
As somebody who is collecting Dark Angels,
then you will love this.
I will love it.
They are my favorite chapters, so I put a lot of love in them. It was great to. Oh, you were asked to draw for Warhammer. Cool, great. And you're asked to do the Dark Angels. Then I love you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you for having me.
Pronounce it in Dutch, but you have so many ways to pronounce it. I call it, and you know the English version is chic, I guess?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So you say chic, not
yeah,
shake?
I say shite, but it's chef. So it's fine.
So we're here with Yasmin.
Yeah, that's better. That's the best one. That yes.
Or the other thing I used to do as a cheat was, okay, so I've got another great guest. If you want to introduce yourself
Yeah.
to us.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
It works.
Yeah.
That's the best.
That's why it's John Carlos.
When I know I'm really going to get it wrong, you know.
I do it all the
He
time.
just blindly goes in there.
Yeah, and usually get it wrong. So tell us a little bit about your work then. What have you got on your table?
I make a comic called Luna the Vampire, and I first started out that I kickstarted it, and now it's published by IDW. Yeah, and the second book is actually coming out at the end of July. And I sometimes do cover work for them for Hanazuki or My Little Pony. But mostly I work on my own comic. It's about a space vampire that is very introverted, doesn't like to go out, but her friends really want her to be more social, and they take her out with not so nice consequences for her.
So what got you into creating the comic in the first place? What drove you to...
I was always a big fan of the cartoons from the 80s and the 90s. Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon. I was a really big fan of stuff like Ren and Stimpy, SpongeBob, Dexter's Laboratory, all that stuff. And I really wanted to make something weird of my own. Okay. And that's why I started drawing this.
That's cool. Yeah. Did you ever think you'd get to a point where you got it published like this? Or
never.
Yeah.
My thing was I never had like the idea of becoming a comic artist, because I've always only illustrated, because I thought making comics, that would be so much work. It would be horrible.
It's like you.
Yeah. And I can say it's still a lot of work, and it's still sometimes horrible. But the things you get out of it, when you finish the story and you can hold it in a book, that's such a satisfying feeling.
Yeah.
So
where can people find your work online? Is there a particular website?
Yes, you can find my work at www.nerdarella.com. Yes, and also on the IDW website.
Yeah. Have you got any other conventions planned this year?
Yes, I'll be going to the London Film and Comic Con, and I'll definitely be at Thought Bubble. Yes. Yes. Thought Bubble is one of my favorites. It's actually the first con I went to in the UK, because I'm not from the UK. Okay. So, yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And your name is actually, that would be helpful as well.
Sam Chapman.
Sam Chapman. I can remember that one.
Are you sure? Because you're not doing so well.
No, I'm not doing very well today. We're here with Sam Chapman, whose comic Silver Song is on the table. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, it's kind of a dark fantasy story about a girl with prophetic abilities, so she can see into the future. But she kind of lacks the foresight of what the world is actually like. Goes off on adventures and gets herself into a lot of trouble.
That's how a story should be.
Oh yeah. So she's trying to set the world to rights and trying to correct the bad things that she sees, but ends up just kind of like making it worse.
Okay. So what gave you the idea behind the story then? Is there anything that stood out?
Well, obviously I grew up in an age where there was a lot of fantasy movies going around, like Willow, Lord of the Rings, stuff like that. I play a lot of tabletop board games, so I was like massively steeped in fantasy.
Yeah.
The thing I always found when I was watching all this stuff is I always had like waifs that had, magical abilities who could see all this stuff, and then they'd give that quest over to the guy, and the guy would go off with his sword and he'd go and solve it. And I'm like, well, if you can see it, why don't you go and do something about it? You have more knowledge on that situation than most. Why don't you go out and do it yourself?
Yeah.
Which is kind of her premise at the beginning of the story. Is like she keeps seeing all this stuff and nothing gets changed, so she's like, right, I'm going to go do it.
So what made you decide to create a comic?
Oh, for a comic. Yeah. I've been reading comics since I was 5. Right. My uncle used to have like a massive stack of Marvel, DC comics, and being a dyslexic, I found it very hard to read normal textbooks, whereas reading comic books was easy because you have the pictures with the text, and I could easily put together what the story's going on. So for me, it's a natural medium to just go straight into.
Brilliant.
So yeah.
So where can people find this comic online?
It's basically at silversongcomic.com.
Yeah.
I'm also part of the Comiccadia collective as well. Okay. So if you go to if you go to their website as well, obviously you can find like all the other cool comics that they've got as well.
Just said you're going to be up the lakes this year.
Yes, I'm really looking forward to it. First year at the lakes. I can't wait. Can't wait.
Yes, no, you'll love it.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers. We're with Dan Whitehead. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm fine, thank you.
Tell us a bit about the work in front of you then. What have we got here?
Well, I've got Hex Loader, which is a kind of 1980s set, sort of weird fiction horror comic in the kind of Vertigo, sort of early Deadline kind of era and style. I've got Midwinter, which is a sort of post-apocalyptic adventure story set after the world was frozen. And I'm just launching Frankenstein, Texas, which is a sort of gothic western in which I imagine what would happen if Frankenstein and his monster, instead of vanishing in the Arctic, what if they actually went to America and hid out in the Wild West.
Which the art, I must admit, just having a look at it. Is it David Hitchcock who's
David Hitchcock, Eagle Award winner David Hitchcock, yeah.
Really sort of a black and white. It just stands out really well.
He's perfect for that kind of Victorian era. He just captures it so well. It's perfect.
So what gave you the idea behind Frankenstein, Texas then?
It was just a random thought that Frankenstein, the story, takes place at the same time as the Wild West era in America.
Okay.
And that sort of got me thinking, well, you know, in Europe we have this kind of Gothic tradition, in America they have this Western tradition. Yeah. What would happen if they overlapped, really? Yeah, and also, you know, the idea of the American frontier kind of lends itself to sort of stories of revenge and redemption, which fits in very well with the Frankenstein story. So I just sort of took it from there and ran with it, really. Just started writing and see what happens if you drop those characters into that setting.
You've also got the book Speculation, just having a quick through that. Spectrum or Commodore?
Oh.
Well, I think that's kind of obvious, isn't it? Yeah.
I'll put my side here. What's that? I'm guessing is it the history?
Yeah, it's a non-fiction book though. Yeah. I mean, my background is in games, sort of writing about them, writing scripts for them.
Okay.
So quite a lot of my stuff has a kind of overlap with gaming. Hex Loader is set in the 1980s computer games industry. And Speculation is kind of back in 2012, which was the 30th anniversary of the Spectrum.
Feel old.
Yeah. I realised I was looking on Amazon and there were no books about it. Okay. So I thought, well, I'll write one. I'll pick like 50 of the games that I thought really summed up that era of game design, where nobody really knew what a computer game was, so you were free to make it however you wanted, really. And they've got this sort of burst of invention from British games designers in that era. Lots of them working from home, you know, no idea of it was going to be an industry at all.
Like comic writers today, to be fair.
Yeah, and so Volume 1 is basically a sort of tribute to those kind of like pioneering titles. And then Volume 2 of Speculation is an exploration of sort of 1980s pop culture through the Spectrum games, all the games based on cartoons, the games based on TV shows and 80s movies, and like how did they, how well did they capture the era they were part of, and all the weird ones as well. There were all kinds of weird games. There was a game based on the guy from the Skips advert, KP Skips, and things like that. There was a Weetabix game.
I remember the Weetabix one. I don't remember the Skips one. No.
Yeah, it's just this weird era when stuff like that would just happen and people would go, yeah, okay, that's fine, that's normal. So yeah, that's what that one's about.
So where can people find your work then?
I have a page on Gumroad. If you search my stuff on Gumroad, it's on there under Zebra Comics. Hex Loader and Midwinter are also on Comicsy. And if you search on Amazon as well, quite a few of them are on Amazon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Is it yourself who does the art on this?
So I'm a writer, creator. We have an artist. She lives in Colorado, which is why she's
right.
here. But yeah, I pretty much, well, apart from artwork, I do everything else. So like a mix of manga and clothing, all based on characters.
What's your name, sorry?
Nigel. Yeah, we should have started there. I mean, as long as you got that name, that's
yes,
fine.
I got that.
You don't need to know my name. So I write these ones. My friend who I started this with writes these two. And then we just sort of create our own universe. We write stories within that, and that's pretty much it.
So what's the idea behind it? Because you're classing yourself as British manga.
Yes.
So what's the whole?
So the style is like a manga
right,
style. So we've taken the manga style but made our own original stories from it. So we created a universe, and the universe itself is a television. So you can see, I mean, this isn't good for audio, but you're
It's
here.
quite
So,
all right.
So you can see like the stories all start with someone watching the show before
Okay.
it goes into the show. So you'll see this one is the same. So you get someone watching the show, then it goes into the show. So for example, the Samurai Chef, which is our first full volume, is a cooking show where the chef judges food by attacking it with a samurai sword. And then, as you do, the food actually turns into monsters and starts fighting back. So it gets a bit messy, kind of crazy. So this is an action comedy, but then this one's is called Serious. This is more of an adventure. So it's about basically a young rabbit called Blake and his journey. Oh yeah, just also a t-shirt.
That's cool t-shirt.
Yeah. So his journey from from a small town to the big city called the Jungle. So his mission is to make something of himself, and he pulls together this business team. So the story takes you through his adventure as he picks up each member of the team, and it's kind of our way of, if you want to achieve something, go do it, overcome these challenges, make something of yourself, that kind of feel-good story. And then this one is Hot Lunch, so this is just like the first issue, if you want to use that term. And it's more of a, drama with some comedy in it, so I wrote this one as well. And it's about a crew of noble thieves, led by this guy here, who are on a mission to bring down a shadowy organisation of restaurant owners called the Circle of Flavour. So again, you kind of see someone watching the show. So you kind of see his. So it starts off with him wanting to join the organisation because on the surface they're like they're protecting the standards of restaurants and food, but in the background they actually want more power, money, just to keep control over everything. So there's a bit of corruption there. So he gets framed for a crime he didn't commit as a way to sort of exile him for reasons that will become clear as I write the book. So then his goals are like just shattered. So he gets a new goal, and now he's going to bring down the organisation. So then he has to go and recruit his team. So the full volume, which will be I've written most of it. We're going to be doing a Kickstarter for it. In a couple of weeks, if my memory is right. So we're going to be end of this month. We're going to be doing a Kickstarter, and it'll be the full volume. So it'll be a sort of thicker book,
that sort of size,
and you'll see sort of how this journey sort of goes from this point.
So what sort of manga do you like reading from Japan? Is there anything that stands out?
So I quite like Lupin. So Lupin the Third, and sort of not a direct influence for this, but I like the slickness of the character and the humour of it as well. So I like those two things combined. So kind of there's some of that in there. All our characters are animals, so there's difference there. I recently, the last manga I read was Assassination Classroom.
That's
So
good, that one.
that is the premise of that is crazy. So
I think it's the one you're talking about. That's weird.
And the first page is crazy. So I was like, okay, let's see where this goes. But I quite like I make a point of sort of not just reading manga, but sort of just regular comics, indie comics from Image, even some Marvel, DC. I find it just helps with just ideas if they come from different sources.
Bringing the whole world together, I suppose.
And even like, a lot of people ask us, do we get our influence from manga? So obviously the visual influence is there, but in terms of storytelling, try and get it just even like TV, like some cartoons that I watch, just different places, films, and try and create something original rather than just sort of mimic what's been done before.
So where can people find more about?
So you can find us on our website, mayamada.com. So that's Mayamada. You'll be able to then follow us on social media. So we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and then, like I said, we're going to be doing a Kickstarter in a couple of weeks. So at some point, we're going to be spamming everyone with details of that. I think we've already begun, in fact, but it will get worse.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
How do? Welcome to Breakdowns, the comic art section of the podcast. I'm Pete Taylor. I'm a small press comics creator and illustrator. Online I trade as This Man, This Pete, and the favourite thing I've drawn since last episode is one of my commissions from SCGC. I got quite a few, but Cyborg Abe Lincoln was definitely my favourite. Kirby is persuaded to sign a deposition siding with Marvel against Simon's copyright claim to the rights to Captain America, when owner Martin Goodman agreed to pay Jack whatever Joe Simon personally received from any settlement. Marvel even got Kirby to draw up several new designs for a patriotic hero in case they lost the case. Also at this time, DC Comics was bought by the Kinney National Company, and previous owners Jack Leibowitz and Harry Donenfeld retired, along with Jack Schiff, the editor who had sued Jack over the Sky Masters newspaper strip. Artist Carmine Infantino was appointed art director and later editorial director. With a new outlook, he ushered in a new era of creativity for DC and recruited fellow artists Joe Kubert, Joe Orlando and Mike Sikowski, also artists, to editorial roles, bringing new ideas to the line. After Ditko's departure, Jack gets some recognition for his story contributions in the Fantastic Four when the credit changes to produced by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby rather than separate writer and artist listings. Despite the rewording of the credits, Jack was still upset with the changes that Lee made to his stories and characters after he'd handed in the art. Things came to a head after Stan made drastic changes to Kirby's intended storyline involving the character known as Him in Fantastic Four 66 to 67. At this time, Kirby seems to have had enough and stops contributing new characters to the company. It's around this time that Kirby draws his first concepts for his Fourth World series and doesn't show Marvel. His work remains outstanding and his plots are still innovative and engaging, but he starts to collect new concepts for a more agreeable publisher. The Fantastic Four cartoon starts to air with episodes based on early Lee and Kirby issues. Merchandise is produced using Kirby artwork, and Jack doesn't receive payment for any of these. July of 68 sees Martin Goodman selling Marvel to a company called Perfect Film. Goodman is kept on as publisher, but the new owners are very involved with the day-to-day activities. When other magazine companies are bought, Marvel see the benefit, gaining a new distributor for their line. Freed from their DC contract, they now expand their line, spinning off characters into new titles and introducing reprint titles of older monster and western stories. Jack doesn't contribute to this expansion and carries on with his three core titles of Fantastic Four, Captain America and Thor. Kirby and family moved to California in early 1969 to benefit their daughter's asthma. Problems continue with his relationship with Stan Lee when a huge amount of Kirby pages are not included in issue 169 of Thor. This seems to suggest that Lee rejected the entire issue. Kirby's wife, Roz, convinces Jack to swap out the full-page splash pages from his current penciled work. She tells him they're too good for them. The Captain America lawsuit that Joe Simon brought is settled, with Marvel paying Simon $3,750. Goodman had promised Jack he would be paid whatever Joe personally received. In a move that can only be regarded as a direct attempt to deceive and defraud Kirby, the publisher secretly pays Simon's lawyer the bulk of the payment. Less than $1,000 is paid directly to Joe, and consequently, this is the amount promised to Kirby. Yeah, promised. They don't even pay him straight away. They make him wait for it. I'm pretty astonished at everybody involved here. Jack's old friend and partner Joe Simon must have known what was going on, as he would have had to instruct his lawyers. Maybe he was annoyed with Kirby over signing the deposition supporting Marvel's case. Kirby signed this before matters with Marvel got worse, and he always seemed to be worried about being out of work. Stan Lee and Goodman might have been pressured by the new bosses, but man, it was a horrible thing to do. At the end of 1969, Jack meets with Marvel and Perfect Film to negotiate a new deal. He returns with assignments to write and draw some books, but no agreed deal. Then, in early 1970, a contract appears in the Kirby's mailbox. The following extract comes from Kirby, King of Comics, written by Mark Evanier, who was Jack's assistant at the time. The new owners had new lawyers, and the new lawyers had new demands. Although the terms under Goodman's ownership had not been good, these were worse. No raise, no credit, not even any security. Marvel could do just about anything they wanted to him, including fire him whenever they liked. If he signed, he could never sue them for anything they'd done to him in the past or anything they'd do to him in the future. There were other troubling causes, each more onerous than the previous. So signing was out of the question. Jack couldn't do that to himself, couldn't do that to his family. He got his attorney involved, but Perfect Film, Marvel, still wouldn't talk to his attorney. Then a lawyer or exec from Perfect Film called Jack directly. This is Kirby's account as he described it in 1970. The caller asked when they'd be receiving the signed contract. Kirby said he needed changes. The caller said there would be no changes. Take it or leave it. Sign it or get out. Jack protested. He was too important to the company to be treated this way. The caller told him he was nuts. Stan Lee created everything at Marvel, and they could get any idiot to draw up Stan's brilliant ideas. At least that's how Jack would remember the conversation. Kirby hung up on him, phoned Infantino, and changed companies. The comic book universe trembled. Infantino signs Kirby to a multi-year contract to work for DC. Jack himself has a condition. He would only work with a writer who delivered a full script, all of the dialogue and directions written up front, or he would write the story himself. In March, Jack finishes his last issue of Fantastic Four, number 102, mails the pages to Marvel, and then rings Stan to resign. When the news hit, the industry and fans were stunned. Even pros like John Buscema reported that he thought Marvel might close up. As far as he was concerned, Jack was the backbone of the company. Someone in the bullpen, later claimed to be staff artist Marie Severin, stuck a cigar butt on the notice board above a note saying, "I quit." At this time in his life, Kirby's at the top of his game. His art at this time is stellar. This is the period of Jack I'm most familiar with. Joe Sinnott became Jack's regular inker with issue 44 of the FF, and his crisp, stylish delineations add a slickness and punch to Jack's already energetic pages. I discovered an interesting point about Kirby's art when I was listening to the Felix Comic Art podcast, a series about original comic art collectors and their collections. It's rare for an episode to pass without a mention of Jack. In this particular episode, number 10 I think, the host Felix Liu is talking to Eric Larson, founder of Image Comics, creator of The Savage Dragon, and a big Kirby art fan. They were discussing the popularity of early comic art pages from Todd McFarlane and Rob Liefeld. Larson describes the attraction of their early artwork to collectors is through the enthusiasm and energy that appears in their art because of their youth at the time. He makes the point that as artists age, their experience can improve their draftsmanship and drawing ability at the cost of this enthusiasm and energy within the artwork. I'm paraphrasing, but the point he was making is that you can't keep that aspect in your art, it dissipates over time. Well, this made me think that obviously Kirby is the exception to that rule, because at this point in his career I've been discussing, Jack is 50 to 53 years old. He's been working professionally in the comics industry for 30 years, but his vigour, passion and enthusiasm hasn't waned. Despite setbacks and betrayals, Kirby's work has arguably even more impact and presence than his earlier work. And for me, there's still more to come, as next time we follow Jack to DC and into his still escalating period of creativity there. As the house ads of the time trumpeted, the Great One is coming. Thanks for listening. You can find me at thismanthispete on Instagram and Twitter. Email me at thismanthispete@gmail.com. My comics are available at thispete.bigcartel.com, and my website is thismanthispete.com.
So, festival news.
Go on then.
Update. I don't know why it went that way.
Let's hope it never goes that way again.
If you're in Kendal, this weekend of recording, which will be the 18th, 19th and 20th of May 2018, the Free Range Comedy Festival is on at the Brewery Arts Centre, and the Comic Art Festival is involved this time. They've sort of linked in to get some shows organised.
Yep.
So we've got the Dark Room, John Robertson's.
I'm going to see that.
You are, which
on Saturday.
is a sort of like a choose your own adventure.
I'm very intrigued. And
Live.
I've spoken to the brewery and they're intrigued too. We're all intrigued.
So they've got a kids and an adults one. They're screening some of the Viz films. 3
Brilliant.
films so rubbish, we'll pay you to come and see them. And they've also got comedy Barney Farmer Buys You a Drink, again linked with Viz, as well as a load of us. So if you're in Kendal or local to Kendal, come along.
Yes.
Give it a go.
If you come to the kids' version of the Dark Room, I'll be there.
Say hello.
Come and say hello.
They've
Buy me
announced
popcorn.
some more guests for the festival. While I bring that up because I wasn't ready. So we have coming Frank Quietly and Kate Evans. I can't remember if we announced these last time.
I don't
anyway,
know.
I'm just
I
going to
can't
read
remember.
them. Hunt Emerson. I got the Everington Brothers.
Woo, woo.
Surprise, surprise. Kate Evans, Cyril McCoy, Luke McGarry's back. Brian Talbot, Mary Talbot, Emma Viacelli.
Yeah.
Are you sure?
I think you said some of them.
Anyway, so that's definite. So more names to add to the list.
Yep.
But also going on at the moment up in Carlisle is Heroines, an international exhibition reimagining comic heroes in their female form.
Yes.
So I just laugh whenever I see it.
Don't.
So over 20 artists have created standard comic characters that are usually male related and put them in a female form.
Yes.
And it's just showing the importance of diversity in comics, essentially. Some of them, they're just quite hilarious and funny, such as Wolverine being Wolverine.
Yeah, that's the one that makes you laugh every time,
isn't
it?
It's funny. The female Mutant Ninja Turtles. The Visible Woman.
Yes, yeah. I think I need to see them.
Yes, well, they are going to be at the Lakes as well, but at the moment they are up in Carlisle at the Vallum Gallery, University of Cumbria campus, between the 7th and the 21st of May. As I say, they will also be at the festival in October.
Because if nothing else, they'll spark a conversation.
Yes, no, definitely, and I think some of the art is brilliant.
It's going to be amazing,
you know.
isn't it? Yeah.
Tintin.
Okay, yeah.
Conass.
For Conan. Okay.
Yeah, there's just so much. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. But if you're in Carlisle up North Way, go and have a nosy. So we have a good question as well.
Hello.
From That Comic Smell podcast.
Hello.
Question for you, first of all.
Hello.
Nikki, what have been some of the biggest challenges in creating the comic so far?
Okay.
In fact, where are you up to?
I've almost finished it.
Okay.
I'm 3 pages from the end, which is quite a daunting place to be, actually. I think one of the challenges has been not the discipline, because I do it in the morning. And then that's fine. I set up, I go upstairs. And so that hasn't been a problem. Having faith in what I'm doing is definitely a big hurdle. And keeping the style consistent. I think it's changed throughout the comic. I think the start of it is a lot. I think it's less detailed than as it goes on. I think people are going to see what I mean when there's this like dark bit in the middle. But yeah, it's keeping that style consistent and still putting the passion into each drawing after you've drawn it so many times. So that's probably the biggest thing. And now it's the anxiety of actually I'm coming to the end, and that adds another level of anxiety, which someone else on Twitter today has said that they feel the same thing with their comic creation. So I'm quite glad that I'm normal. Within
Some would
reason.
argue. Yeah. Okay. And then it comes to me to put it all together.
Yeah, that's fine. I am the creative genius, obviously, and I shouldn't lower myself to all these, things like putting it together.
And then it comes to you to sell it.
Yes, that isn't daunting me as much as I thought it would.
Okay.
Because actually I'm really proud of it. So I think if you're proud of what you've produced, then I think it's easy to sell it, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Another question to both of us. Really interested to know what some of your favourite small comic press books have been so far this year.
Mm-hmm.
So mine isn't a book, it's a writer who's going to be on the show in a couple of episodes, Matt Garvey.
Are you just fanboying?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
I sort of found him this year, read his book this year, and I found
stalking
him like the Lord. And his books have just been really good. Every single one has got what I like, a sort of a twist or something that makes you think a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And they all have that sort of thought about it. So I like it. And the artists that he chooses to do the work as well. Brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
So Matt Garvey and his whole line of range of comics.
I thought you were going to say his whole life then.
Matt Garvey's life is now my life. Anything yourself?
The Awesome Comic. So from
issue 2 is coming out very soon.
Well, we need to get that then.
We already have.
That's all right then.
View copy.
Because in the good old tradition of comics, that is a fun thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I like personally. Yeah. I like to be taken on a fun ride. And I want it to hit me square between the eyes.
Or with violence and blood and
Yeah. I do like a bit of violence.
So next episode, just talking about that, we will be reviewing the next comic, the Awesome Comic issue 2. And it is going to be a review sensation, spectacular.
Oh,
between all of us, as far as where Mike and Pete are joining in, just going to do some reviews of our favourite comics this past year.
Yeah.
Some of the ones we missed.
Yes.
We just had one land today, Apollo as well.
Literally, it landed.
Oh, dear.
It's about moon landings.
Yes, dear. We know.
Oh, that tickled me, that did.
We've also got Zoom Rockman on next episode as well.
Yeah.
So we'll have a chat with one of the youngest creators out there at the moment, who's doing really well for himself.
He's a baby.
In comparison to you,
to
dear.
Me, yes. I'm old enough to be his mother.
Yes.
I know.
Do you feel bad?
Just to make myself feel even older.
So go and check out the Kickstarter for Mantic Games.
Definitely.
That Rob's talks about. Check out all the guys that we had chats with. Please do.
They are
check
lovely.
out their work.
And they listen to us.
Yeah, that's something we forgot to mention, actually.
Yes. That was
fans, people who listen. It's so weird. Never get used to that.
No, I honestly thought it was just me and you talking to each other.
We talk to each other more on this than we do in real life.
It's true.
So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
Until next time on June the 1st.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to think of a nice end line there. And
you didn't think of anything,
gone.
did you? No, just say bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. Find out more about the festival at comicartfestival.com. Find out more about the show and how to contact us at comicartpodcast.uk. Find us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Music composed by Pop Noir.
This podcast is part of Britpod Scene, an independent network of uniquely British podcasts that's always growing. Check out BritpodScene.com or Britpod Scene on Twitter to find out more.